Hello chemistry students, this is Mr. Nicholson, and in this video what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at the separation of liquids. This is part of a series on the separation of mixtures, and our first technique that we're going to look at is distillation. Okay, so this technique is actually used to separate what is known as miscible liquids. Okay, so by miscible we mean liquids that can actually mix together and be one phase. Alright, so they mix together. You can't tell that they are two separate liquids because they mix together around each other. Now, what actually happens is that this technique takes advantage of the physical property of boiling point. So both of these liquids in this mixture have to have different boiling points. And we use a special piece of apparatus called a distillation kit, which is comprised of a round bottom flask where our mixture is loaded into. Alright, and some quick fit glassware that runs into a condenser that is actually has a water jacket around it. Alright, so that is our water jacketed condenser, which is located labeled just over here, and that actually lets us, once we actually boil one part of our mixture, cool it back down so we can collect it in a collection vessel just here. So just as we take this through here, what's actually going to happen is we're going to use a heat source to heat our mixture. Now when we do this, you've got to be really careful to actually include what's known as boiling chips. These are small pieces of ceramic that actually increase the surface area, and that stops bumping where a liquid heats up and rapidly expands and will shoot up out of the container that it's in. And we don't want that to happen, because if that happens, our mixture will shoot up and run down our condenser. And we want to actually have control over what goes down our condenser. So the idea is we'll heat this up until we get to the boiling point of the first component, that is the lowest boiling point. And the vapors from that will go up here and feed down into our condenser, where they will be cooled down and they will condense and be collected in this second vessel just here. Now it's important when you actually do this that you monitor the temperature on the thermometer. Alright, and you keep track of that, because if you start seeing it raising above the boiling point of the component, then you've separated all of the component out of the mixture. Okay, so that's distillation in a nutshell. Let's jump over to our second technique that we're going to investigate today. When we have two different liquids that do not mix, they're known as what is called a miscible liquid. Alright. And we can use a piece of equipment known as a separating funnel to actually separate them on the basis of density. Okay, so if we have a look at our separating funnel just here, what actually happens is that when the liquids separate out together, you'll have a lower density liquid that is at the top and a higher density liquid that is at the bottom. And so by the use of a carefully positioned valve at the base just here, alright, known as a stopcock, we're able to actually separate out the two mixtures quite easily. Now there's a few things you need to know. Often we use a separating funnel to actually mix some liquids if we're trying to clean up a reaction that we've done, or take a salt that we're into a liquid phase from an oil phase. Alright, and they're two liquids that won't actually mix together, and that's a common thing to do. You might try and salt a chemical out into the liquid phase to actually separate it from the starting materials of the reaction. And what we'll often have to do is we'll have to actually use a separating funnel to actually mix the two liquids as well. And so that's why they have a stopper at the top here, so you can actually use them to mix. And when you're doing that, you invert them, making sure you have your palm over the top of that stopper at the top so it doesn't come off and you don't cover yourself in whatever's inside the separating funnel. And you give it a gentle swirl, and occasionally relieve the pressure inside by opening the stopcock. Make sure you point it away from anybody around you when you do that, otherwise you could lose a friend or and possibly hurt someone. Now, when it comes to actually separating out of this, you need to make sure you take this stopper out, otherwise you'll form a vacuum. Okay, and what you do then is you simply open this stopcock and drain the lower fraction into a beaker or other container. And just be mindful when you do this, think about which fraction you want to keep. Alright, and whether or not it is better for you to stop that if you're collecting the lower fraction, for example, before you take any of the upper fraction into it, or vice versa. If you're interested in keeping the top fraction, you would let a little bit of that pass through with the bottom fraction. Alright, so just be thoughtful about what you're actually trying to do. Now, a little note, this is a note of experience. When you're doing a practical task that involves a separatory funnel, or you're using one for a purpose, it is a really good idea to keep the fraction you separate, even if it is a fraction you don't need, until you know you have properly separated what you intend to separate. It is really easy to mix up the two layers by accident when you're actually working, and you can often just return back to that layer you've separated and do what you had to do if you've made a mistake. So make sure you don't discard it until you are sure you have collected the correct of the two layers. Alrighty, that brings this video to a close. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in class. Bye.